something's going to change the direction of Europe. Now, we are heading in the wrong direction. We're being replaced. We're under attack with mass immigration. Now, Northern Ireland, don't know if you know about the history of Northern Ireland. Bloody Sunday changed the direction of Northern Ireland as a historic day. I believe if I was targeted in such a way, it would spark an uprising like the government had never even dreamed of. No, could never even dream of. So I believe that would happen. I have a lot of people telling me we should be careful, or you need to be extra careful. I probably do need to be extra careful. I walk everywhere without security. I had the incident recently at a train station in London. I don't have the funds to pay for 24-hour security, yeah? And I am living in amongst it within the UK as a target. But I just think I think that we got in this mess. We're in this mess through being careful. All of us as a country are in this mess through being careful. Now's not the time to be careful. And now's not the time to show any fear. I listened to what Charlie Kirk said. Charlie Kirk actually spoke up massively for me, but not just for me when I was imprisoned, for Brits' free speech. He got it. Go back to his comments from 2018. He fully understood what was happening with free speech. And then he travelled here recently. He helped shine the torch on it. And if you listen to what he says, and I think that that's what people should try to do, and he will inspire still now, even though the next generation's videos will continue to inspire them. But they took him out because he was so influential in getting whether it be the forgotten or the young men to understand their identity, to understand their purpose, to give them faith. And that's what we said we want to do. Keir Starmer was voted in off 9 million votes. 20 million people just didn't vote, Patrick, in that election. But 20 million are us. The people who have been told their voices don't matter. Their voices don't count. So we're there to tell them, no, your voices do count, and you do matter. And if we can captivate them, and we can electrify the working class. See, a lot of this comes down to class in the UK. They don't like us. That's the reality of it. The establishment do not like us. Okay? Now, we've got 650 politicians in Westminster. How many of them were there to speak to the neglected, forgotten people? How many of them? Not one. We had politicians flying from Poland, France, Germany, Belgium, all over Europe. Lead politicians come to speak to the British population. Not one, because the whole building is still the establishment. It doesn't matter if they say they're against the establishment on X. Yeah, if they say they're against the establishment, they'd have been there with the people. None. We want to be the cultural revolution, but this country needs a political revolution. But it needs a political revolution that doesn't censor the people getting involved in it. So, for example, the Reform Party, which is Nigel Farage, which I believe will win the next election, yeah, and will be a hell of a lot better than where we're at. But they still censor and ban. You can't talk about transgenderism. You can't talk about Islam. So we don't need a government that tells the public that they can't raise their concerns. And people are kicked out of their party for doing so. Right. Because that's an attack. That's an attack on free speech still. That's not believing in free speech. I saw Nigel Farage sat in America talking about free speech. They don't believe in free speech themselves. They just don't believe in it. Everyone has to sign an NDA. Everyone has to sign an NDA who's at the hierarchy of reform.
In a tense and emotional address, British activist Tommy Robinson admitted that he fears for his life in the wake of the Charlie Kirk incident, a moment that has reignited debate about political speech, public safety, and the risks taken by controversial figures who challenge the establishment. Robinson acknowledged that many close to him have urged caution. "There are a lot of people telling me that we should be careful, and I should be careful too," he said. He said before conceding that he lives without the luxury of constant protection. Unlike high-profile politicians, Robinson pointed out, he cannot afford 24-hour security and often moves about in public, exposed and vulnerable. "I go around with no security. I don't have money to pay for 24-hour security, and I'm hanging around the national park like a target," he explained. Yet, in typical Robinson fashion, he quickly pivoted from fear to defiance. "I just think that we got into this mess by being careful. But now is not the time to be careful, and now is not the time to show fear." His words were as much a personal statement as they were a rallying cry for his supporters, urging them to remain bold even when the risks are undeniable. The Charlie Kirk incident, where the American conservative commentator faced hostility in public without the heavy security detail typical of high-profile political figures, has become, in Robinson's telling, an example of courage. He framed Kirk's willingness to appear in public as a testament to free speech activism. Kirk also went around and didn't seem to have a team, and that brought a lot to the cause of free speech, Robinson said, suggesting that both men embody a willingness to confront danger in defense of their beliefs. This framing underscores Robinson's ongoing strategy, presenting himself not only as a political dissident, but also as a man on the front lines of a broader cultural battle. His narrative blends personal peril with the idea of public duty, casting himself and allies like Kirk as figures who sacrifice personal safety for the principle of speaking freely. For Robinson's critics, this rhetoric is reckless, needlessly escalating tensions in an already polarized environment. For his supporters, however, it cements his role as a fearless truth teller standing against institutions that would rather silence him. What is clear is that Robinson's remarks mark yet another chapter in the fraught intersection of politics, media, and security. Whether his words are read as an honest confession of vulnerability or a deliberate attempt to amplify his defiant persona, they serve to remind audiences that the price of populist dissent, both in Britain and abroad, remains dangerously high.
Can we talk about The Guardian, shall we? Because Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, just cannot stop, can he? He's been on I think he's written more tweets and been in more papers than anyone else. He's, of course, saying Trump is fanning the flames of division tonight. Funny from a bloke who's just been putting out statements about how he found a bunch of people waving flags, divisive and racist, on the weekend. But there we go, Paul. Yeah. What do you make of it?
Well, Sadiq Khan called 1 million people, approximately, or somewhere between 110,000 and 1 million people far right at the weekend, on the basis they happened to be in London at that point. So,
do you think he meant white? Because he doesn't like that either, does he? So maybe that was why.
I can't see colour, so I don't know what he means. But I think it's fantastic that Donald Trump's here. Naturally, of course I do. The great man himself. He looks very comfortable when he's in the UK. He always looks like he enjoys being here. He kind of wanders around like he owns the place slightly. He's got one of the best golf courses in the world in Thornbury, and he's landed looking incredibly glamorous with his beautiful wife. He's not going to care what Sadiq Khan thinks. Yeah, he's not going to care what things are being projected onto the walls. You say that,
Paul. You say he doesn't care, but last time they had this massive spat. I don't know if you remember it. And after when he left the UK, he went absolutely after.
I'd like to take you back. Actually, he probably is losing sleep over Sadiq Khan because he really has. He does. I mean, God bless him. Don't come for me, Trumpster. Daddy, as we like to call him here. Daddy Trump. He is quite thin-skinned, so I'd imagine, quite honestly, he probably is quite affected.
Matthew, just because this is not what I mean. Looking across these front pages, I want to come back to The Guardian, of course, but looking across these front pages, what Keir Starmer would have hoped for today is they all read President Donald Trump's in town for a state visit. And that is not the case. There's a handful of papers talking about Trump as the lead story, but only really a few out of all of them. And of course, one of those talking about Trump is Sadiq Khan, one of his, of course, best friends, as one of his mates, as Keir Starmer put it, is really going to upset the president when he's trying to get a good deal out of him.
Yeah, I think it's somewhat of a distraction. I think, you've got to think about Sadiq and what London is like. He's playing to his sort of MO, the idea that, Donald Trump doesn't poll well in this country, probably polls the worst in London, as it being a fairly liberal city. Yeah. Boris Johnson sort of did similar. I mean, he used to lean into the fact that, he used to like the idea of an amnesty for asylum seekers or people that were here illegally, because he knew that would play well and Tories could therefore get elected in London. Keeps him on the front pages. And obviously this is at a time where Keir's on sort of fragile ground at the moment. It appears to be,
I think that's an understatement.
Sadiq may fancy a run back in Parliament, or there are certain people in Labour that think he might actually try and run for another term. This sort of keeps his core. I thought Chris don't like that one. Keeps his core vote happy, obviously.